welcome one and all to another time that we'll be spending studying the words of Holy Writ, the words of the Lord. And as can be seen, we'll be looking at the earthly and the heavenly sanctuary service and to see what we can glean from what transpired in the earthly, so we can have a good understanding of what's going on or taking place in the heavenly. And we're going to read a prayer thought, and after the prayer thought, then we are going to say a word of prayer and continue with our study. And our prayer thought is taken from the book Evangelism, page 222, paragraph 3. It reads as follows: As a people, we should be earnest students of prophecy. We should not rest until we become intelligent in regard to the subject of the sanctuary, which is brought out in the visions of Daniel and John. This subject sheds light on our present position and work and gives us unmistakable proof that God has led us in our past experience. It explains our disappointment in 1844, showing us that the sanctuary to be cleansed was not the earth, as we had supposed, but that Christ then entered into the most holy apartment of the heavenly sanctuary, and is there performing the closing work of the priestly office in fulfillment of the words of the angel to the prophet Daniel, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. So here inspiration is telling us that we should not rest until we become intelligent in regard to the subject of the sanctuary. And that subject is brought out in the visions of John, or Daniel and John. So both Daniel and John, the Revelator, goes into the subject. And we are going to reference to these writers and see what they had to say about the subject. So on that note, let us pray. Great Father in heaven, once again we're privileged to be able to read and study your words. And we pray that your Spirit will be upon us, in us, and be manifested through us. And that likewise your Spirit will be with those that are listening, that collectively we might be drawn closer to thee. So now whatsoever we fail of asking, fail not to grant according to your wisdom. And we pray that you will speak your words to us even now. Through Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Now, to understand this subject, we are going to go back and look at some things that transpired in the Old Testament time, in the time of Moses. And in Exodus chapter 25, verse 1, verse 8, and verse 9, we read as follows: And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Let them make me a sanctuary, that I may dwell among them, according to all that I show thee, after the pattern of the tabernacle, and the pattern of all the instruments thereof, even so shall he make it. So here the Lord instructed Moses that he had taken him and he had showed him a pattern, a design, how he wanted him to make the sanctuary. And he told Moses that he should make the sanctuary exactly based on what he was shown. And the reason why Moses was to build a sanctuary, because God told him that he desired to dwell among the people. And this was going to be his dwelling place, the medium through which he was going to tabernacle with them. And so Moses, in being instructed by God, got, as we would say, the blueprint of what it was he should build. And the Lord was clear when he indicated to him that he should build it based on the pattern that he had showed him. Okay? So Moses was to undertake this work, and God was going to be with him. And God himself had given him instruction as to how the design should look. And in continuing, we read the following, and it is taken from Psalm 77, verse 13, and Psalm 68, verse 24, and it reads as follows: Thy way, O God, is in the sanctuary. Who is so great a God as our God? So if you want to know the way of God, to understand who God is, how he works, you need to have an intelligent understanding of the sanctuary, because God's way is in the sanctuary. So if you do not have a proper understanding of the sanctuary or the sanctuary service, you're not going to have a correct understanding of God. Now in Psalm 68 and verse 24, we read the following: They have seen thy goings, O God, even the goings of my God, my King, in the sanctuary. Here we are told again that if you want to understand God's goings, his workings, you need to understand how the sanctuary service works, what it is about. And so here in Psalm 77 and in Psalm 68, we're essentially told the same thing. And this is why Inspiration had told us in the book Evangelism that we need to have an intelligent understanding of the sanctuary. We have to. Now, in Exodus chapter 25, verse 10 through to 11, we read the following. And this is again based on the pattern or instruction that Moses was given. And it reads, And they shall make an ark of shittim wood, 2 cubits and a half shall be the length thereof, and 1.5 cubits the breadth thereof, and 1.5 cubits the height thereof. And thou shalt overlay it with pure gold, within and without shalt thou overlay it, and shall make upon it a crown of gold round about. So this is what the Lord was instructing him to do. And this we call the Ark of the Covenant. And that was what the Lord told Moses to make. And so the Lord told him the type of wood to use. And when he was completed in making it, he was to overlay it with gold.
Make an ark of acacia wood, a sacred chest, 3 3/4 feet long, 2 1/4 feet wide, and 2 1/4 feet high. Overlay it inside and outside with pure gold, and put a molding of gold all around it. Cast 4 rings of gold for it, and attach them to its 4 feet, 2 rings on each side. Make poles from acacia wood and overlay them with gold. Fit the poles into the rings at the sides of the ark to carry it. These carrying poles must never be taken from the rings. They are to be left there permanently. When the ark is finished, place inside it the stone tablets inscribed with the terms of the covenant which I will give to you. Then make the ark's cover, the place of atonement, out of pure gold. It must be 3 3/4 feet long and 2 1/4 feet wide. Then used hammered gold to make 2 cherubim and place them at the 2 ends of the atonement cover. Attach the cherubim to each end of the atonement cover, making it all one piece. The cherubim will face each other, looking down on the atonement cover with their wings spread out above it. Place inside the ark the stone tablets inscribed with the terms of the covenant, which I will give to you. Then put the atonement cover on top of the ark. I will meet with you there and talk to you from above the atonement cover between the gold cherubim that hover over the ark of the covenant. From there, I will give you my commands for the people of Israel.
So as we can see, the ark, and above the ark, where the 2 angels sat or was looking down, we call the mercy seat. And God's glory would be shined out from between those two angels that you see above the mercy seat. And this is called the Ark of the Covenant. And that's one piece of furniture so far. And Moses was told to build these things based on the pattern he was shown. Okay? Now, in Exodus chapter 25, verse 23 to 24 and verse 30, we read the following. Thou shalt also make a table of shittim wood. 2 cubits shall be the length thereof, and a cubit the breadth thereof, and a cubit and a half the height thereof. And thou shalt overlay it with pure gold, and make thereon a crown of gold round about. And thou shalt set upon the table showbread before me always. This is what the Lord told Moses to build. And we call this the table of showbread.
Then make a table of acacia wood, 3 feet long, 1.5 feet wide, and 2 1/4 feet high. Overlay it with pure gold, and run a molding of gold around it. Put a rim about 3 inches wide around the top edge, and put a gold molding all around the rim. Make 4 gold rings, and put the rings at the 4 corners by the 4 legs, close to the rim around the top. These rings will support the poles used to carry the table. Make these poles from acacia wood and overlay them with gold. And make gold plates and dishes, as well as pitchers and bowls to be used in pouring out drink offerings. You must always keep the special bread of the presence on the table before me.
Now, that's the table of showbread. The next piece of furniture, and he made a candlestick of pure gold. This candlestick now is not made with any wood and then overlaid with gold. And all the furnitures we're describing or looking at were the furnitures that was going to go inside the sanctuary. So we see the Ark of the Covenant, the table of showbread, and now we have the candlestick. But the candlestick now, the difference with it, it's all of gold. And he made a candlestick of pure gold. Of beaten work made he the candlestick, his shaft and his branch and his bowls, his knops and his flowers were of the same, and 6 branches going out of the sides thereof, 3 branches of the candlestick out of the one side thereof, and 3 branches of the candlestick out of the other side thereof. And he made 7 lamps, and his snuffers and his snuff dishes of pure gold.
Make a lampstand of pure hammered gold. The entire lampstand and its decorations will be one piece. The base, center stem, lamp cups, buds, and blossoms. It will have 6 branches, 3 branches going out from each side of the center stem. Each of the 6 branches will hold a cup shaped like an almond blossom, complete with buds and petals. The center stem of the lampstand will be decorated with 4 almond blossoms, complete with buds and petals. 1 blossom will be set beneath each pair of branches where they extend from the center stem. The decorations and branches must all be one piece with the stem, and they must be hammered from pure gold. Then make the 7 lamps for the lampstand, and set them so they reflect their light forward. The lamp snuffers and trays must also be made of pure gold. You will need 75 pounds of pure gold for the lampstand and its accessories. Be sure that you make everything according to the pattern I have shown you here on the mountain.
Now, we continue. And thou shalt make an altar to burn incense upon. Of shittim wood shalt thou make it. A cubit shall be the length thereof, and a cubit the breadth thereof. 4 squares shall it be, and 2 cubits shall be the height thereof. The horns thereof shall be of the same, and thou shalt overlay it with pure gold, the top thereof and the sides thereof round about, and the horns thereof thou shalt make unto it a crown of gold round about. And that's the altar of incense, what it looked like. And so the altar of incense would ensure that the sanctuary had a sweet smelling savor or essence, fragrance, because blood was constantly being brought into the sanctuary. And the blood would have a raw smell, a strong smell, as most people would know. And this is just a place where blood was just accumulated. And so the essence would give the place a sweet smell, and to show that in the midst of sin, the essence signifying the sweetness of the prayers of the saints would ascend to God, and he would smell the prayers, what the incense represent, coming up to him, a sweet smell, the confessions of sins.
Then make a small altar out of acacia wood for burning incense. It must be 18 inches square and 3 feet high, with horns at the corners carved from the same piece of wood as the altar. Overlay the top, sides, and horns of the altar with pure gold, and run a gold molding around the entire altar. Beneath the molding, on opposite sides of the altar, attach 2 gold rings to support the carrying poles. The poles are to be made of acacia wood and overlaid with gold. Place the incense altar just outside the inner curtain, opposite the ark's cover, the place of atonement, that rests on the ark of the covenant. I will meet with you there. Every morning when Aaron trims the lamps, he must burn fragrant incense on the altar, and each evening when he tends to the lamps, he must again burn incense in the Lord's presence. This must be done from generation to generation. Do not offer any unholy incense on this altar, or any burnt offerings, grain offerings, or drink offerings. Once a year, Aaron must purify the altar by placing on its horns the blood from the offering made for the atonement of sin. This will be a regular annual event from generation to generation, for this is the Lord's supremely holy altar.
And that's the altar and incense. And thou shalt hang it upon 4 pillars of shittim wood, overlaid with pure gold. Their hooks shall be of gold upon the 4 sockets of silver. And thou shalt hang up the veil under the taches, that thou mayest bring in thither within the veil the ark of the testimony. And the veil shall divide unto you between the holy place and the most holy place. So the sanctuary had 2 apartments, or 2 rooms. One was called the holy place, and one was called the most holy place. The reason why one was called the holy place and one was called the most holy place, because God resided in the most holy place. And there's nowhere holier than where God resides. And as a result, the designation for where God resided was the most holy place, because there's nowhere holier than where he was. And this is why they call it the most holy place. And the holy place was the first apartment, and there is where most of the priests would go to perform their daily priestly task. But in the most holy place, only the high priest alone could go inside the most holy place. And only one time for the year could the priest go in the most holy place. All the other days of the year, no one entered the most holy place. Okay? And this is how the sanctuary was divided into two sections. So you had the Ark of the Covenant in the most holy place, and all the other three pieces of furniture were in the holy place. And the curtain there that was hung up separated the two apartments. The sanctuary was overlaid with gold. There was no windows in the sanctuary, none. And so the only thing they could use for essence to keep the place refreshingly smelling good was the altar of incense. And the altar of incense was directly in front of the curtain that divided. So as the incense ascended, it would go over the curtain into the most holy apartment, and God will smell the sweet smelling savor of the incense, which represented the prayer of the saints. And so thou shalt rear up the tabernacle according to the fashion thereof, which was showed thee in the mount. And thou shalt make a veil of blue and purple and scarlet, and fine twined linen of cunning work, with cherubims shall it be made. So this is what God wanted the curtains, the color of the curtains to be like. And the Lord instructed Moses what should be on those curtains. And see, he said, put cherubim design upon it. And I want scarlet and purple and blue. That's the color of the curtain. And it's going to be used to separate the holy place from the most holy place. Okay? And we should have an idea how it was separated, the different apartments, and where the altar of incense was located. Okay? And thou shalt hang it upon 4 pillars of shittim wood overlaid with gold. Their hooks shall be of gold, upon the 4 sockets of silver, and thou shalt hang them upon the veil under the taches, that thou mayest bring in thither within the veil the ark of the testimony. So that within the veil, or over the other side, in the most holy place, that's where the ark goes. And the veil shall divide unto you between the holy place and the most holy place. And thou shalt put the mercy seat upon the ark of the testimony in the most holy place. And the mercy seat is what was on top of the ark, where the angels sat, was there kneeling or bowing before. So you see the ark, you see the mercy seat where the angels sat, or this is described as a seat where they're seated, bowing their head in reverence. And this is what Moses depicted. And so it is called the most holy place. And so we can see again how the curtain divided the holy place from the most holy place. And the priests would only be able to operate in the holy place during their daily service. And in the most holy place, as we said before, only the high priest could go inside the most holy place once a year. So I hope we're clear so far, and we're going to progress. And now the Lord is going to tell Moses where he puts the furniture, where each piece goes. And thou shalt set the table without the veil. So the table goes outside of the veil, and the candlestick over against the table on the side of the tabernacle toward the south, and thou shalt put the table on the north side. Okay? And it continues, And he put the golden altar in the tent of the congregation before the veil, and he burnt sweet incense thereon, as the Lord commanded Moses. So outside the veil, or on the other side of the curtain, this is not the most holy part now, the holy place. You have the table with the showbread. You have the altar of incense, and the Lord is telling him that you put it on the side toward the south, and thou shalt put the table on the north side. So the Lord described to him where the altar of incense must go, where the table of showbread must go, and where the candlestick should be put. So he already described to him where the Ark of the Covenant goes. So here the Lord is telling him that you put the furnitures in particular direction, as I will tell you. And Moses followed. And thou shalt make an altar of shittim wood, 5 cubits long, and 5 cubits broad. And the altar shall be 4 square, and the height thereof shall be 3 cubits. And thou shalt make the horns of it upon the 4 corners thereof. His horn shall be of the same, and thou shalt overlay it with brass. So this altar now, while it was made, it was now overlaid not with gold, but with brass.
Using acacia wood, make a square altar, 7.5 feet wide, 7.5 feet long, and 4.5 feet high. Make a horn at each of the 4 corners of the altar, so the horns and altar are all one piece. Overlay the altar and its horns with bronze. The ash buckets, shovels, basins, meat hooks, and fire pans will all be made of bronze. Make a bronze grating with a metal ring at each corner. Fit the grating halfway down into the firebox, resting it on the ledge built there. For moving the altar, make poles from acacia wood and overlay them with bronze. To carry it, put the poles into the rings at the 2 sides of the altar. The altar must be hollow, made from planks. Be careful to build it just as you were shown on the mountain.
And so that's the altar. And that's what they were going to burn the sacrifices on. And the Lord came back to Moses and said, and the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Thou shalt also make a laver of brass, and his foot also of brass, to wash withal. And thou shalt put it between the altar of the congregation and the altar. And thou shalt put water therein, for Aaron and his sons shall wash their hands and their feet thereat. When they go into the tabernacle of the congregation, they shall wash with water, that they die not. Or when they come near to the altar to minister, to burn offering made by fire unto the Lord, so they shall wash their hands and their feet, that they die not. And it shall be a statute forever to them, even to him and to his seed throughout their generations. So here now, the Lord is saying, this altar that they go into, this veil, or not veil, this container will have water in it. So when Aaron, they offer sacrifices, if any blood be on them, their hands or their feet, the water is there to wash off the blood. Because if they go in the sanctuary with any blood on them, on their feet or on their hands, they are going to die. Because the blood is sin. So they have to get that off them. If they go in with any blood on them, they're going to die. And this is what the container looked like.
And the Lord said to Moses,
Make a large bronze wash basin with a bronze pedestal. Put it between the tabernacle and the altar, and fill it with water. Aaron and his sons will wash their hands and feet there, before they go into the tabernacle to appear before the Lord, and before they approach the altar to burn offerings to the Lord. They must always wash before ministering in these ways, or they will die. This is a permanent law for Aaron and his descendants, to be kept from generation to generation.
And thou shalt set the altar of the burnt offering before the door of the tabernacle of the tent of the congregation. And thou shalt set the laver between the tent of the congregation and the altar, and shalt put water therein. And thou shalt set up the court round about, and hang upon the hanging at the court gate. So this essentially is what it looked like. You had the altar that burned the sacrifices, and you had the laver that had the water that they had to wash their hands in before they went inside the sanctuary. If they did not do this, and this was the curtains that surrounded the sanctuary, okay? And so this was the priest, as the sinner would bring the animal and would confess their sin upon the animal, and then the animal would be slain, and the priest would catch some of the blood, and the animal would be offered as a sacrifice for the sin of the person. So the animal died in their stead, and the priest would take the blood inside the sanctuary. But before the priest went into the sanctuary, the priest had to ensure that he had no blood on him. And this is why he had the water there to inspect and look at himself, his hands and his feet, and wash off any blood that might have accidentally spilled on him. Okay? And he reared up the court round about the tabernacle and the altar, and set the hanging of the court gate. So Moses finished the work. Then the cloud covered the tent of the congregation, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And Moses was not able to enter into the tent of the congregation because the cloud abode thereon. And the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And when the cloud was taken up from over the tabernacle, the children of Israel went onward in all their journeyings. But if the cloud were not taken up, then they journeyed not till the day that it was taken up. For the cloud of the Lord was upon the tabernacle by day, and fire was on it by night, in the sight of all the house of Israel throughout all their journeyings. And so this essentially was what Israel saw in their goings. And so they would not move. And that until the glory moved. This was God's presence with them. And God's presence went straight in the most holy place. And God dwelt with his people. And this is why he said, let them build me a sanctuary that I may dwell amongst them. And God wanted to dwell among them. And this is why he told them to build the sanctuary. And they saw God's glory in the day as a cloud, and in the night as a flaming fire. Now we continue.
Then the Lord said to Moses,
Collect choice spices, 12.5 pounds of pure myrrh, 6.25 pounds each of cinnamon and of sweet cane, 12.5 pounds of cassia, and 1 gallon of olive oil. Blend these ingredients into a holy anointing oil. Use this scented oil to anoint the tabernacle, the ark of the covenant, the table and all its utensils, the lampstand and all its accessories, the incense altar, the altar of burnt offering with all its utensils, and the large wash basin with its pedestal. Sanctify them to make them entirely holy. After this, whatever touches them will become holy. Use this oil also to anoint Aaron and his sons. Sanctify them so they can minister before me as priests. This will always be my holy anointing oil. It must never be poured on the body of an ordinary person, and you must never make any of it for yourselves. It is holy, and you must treat it as holy.
And so God was specific, very specific, very, very specific in how things should be done. Now in Numbers chapter 4, verse 35, 47, and 49, the Lord said the following: from 30 years old and upward, even unto 50 years old, everyone that entereth into the service of the work for the work in the tabernacle of the congregation. So you started at 30, you retired at 50. So now the Lord did not have priests in there that had declined in years, that could make mistakes. No, sometime after the Lord extended the years though, and he used David to do it, because like John the Baptist's father, he was older than 50. He and his wife Elizabeth were older. So sometime after the Lord extended the age, okay? But this reference states, from 30 years old and upward, even unto 50 years old, everyone that came to do service of the ministry and the service of the burden in the tabernacle of the congregation, according to the commandment of the Lord, they were numbered by the hand of Moses, everyone according to his service and according to his burden. Thus were they numbered of him, as the Lord commanded Moses. And so the priests started at 30 years old, and at that time they retired at 50. Okay? 20 years of work, and then they retired. No. When then would they start to train? Same Numbers, chapter 8. And I have taken the Levites for all the firstborn of the children of Israel, and I have given the Levites as a gift to Aaron and to his sons from among the children of Israel to do service of the children of Israel in the tabernacle of the congregation, and to make an atonement for the children of Israel. And Moses and Aaron and all the congregation of the children of Israel did to the Levites according unto all that the Lord commanded Moses concerning the Levites. So did the children of Israel unto them. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, this is it that belongeth unto the Levites. From 20 and 5 years old and upward shall they go in to wait upon the service of the tabernacle of the congregation. And from the age of 50 years, they shall cease waiting upon the service thereof, and shall serve no more, but shall minister with their brethren in the tabernacle of the congregation to keep the charge, and shall do no service. Thus shalt thou do unto the Levites touching their charge. So no, the priest could not start working until he's 30. But when he was 25 years old, he started his training. This is what the Lord did. So they had to be trained for 5 years. It's just like they're doing a ministerial degree. So by the time they started their work, they would not go into the sanctuary to make mistakes. They would be groomed, be trained, and so by the time they reached 30 years old, they would be fully ready for their work, and they would not go into the work and make mistakes, or they would not learn on the job. And so for 25 years old, they started to train them, okay?
Make the robe of the ephod entirely of blue cloth, with an opening for Aaron's head in the middle of it. The opening will be reinforced by a woven collar so it will not tear. Make pomegranates out of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, and attach them to the hem of the robe, with gold bells between them. The gold bells and pomegranates are to alternate all the way around the hem. Aaron will wear this robe whenever he enters the holy place to minister to the Lord, and the bells will tinkle as he goes in and out of the Lord's presence. If he wears it, he will not die. Next, Make a medallion of pure gold, using the techniques of an engraver. Inscribe it with these words: "Set apart as holy to the Lord." This medallion will be attached to the front of Aaron's turban by means of a blue cord. Aaron will wear it on his forehead, thus bearing the guilt connected with any errors regarding the sacred offerings of the people of Israel. He must always wear it, so the Lord will accept the people. Weave Aaron's patterned tunic from fine linen cloth. Fashion the turban out of this linen as well. Also make him an embroidered sash. Then, for Aaron's sons, make tunics, sashes, and headdresses to give them dignity and respect. Clothe Aaron and his sons with these garments, and then anoint and ordain them. Set them apart as holy so they can serve as my priests.
And so Aaron was dressed different from the rest of the priests. And these stones that he wore on the
With the most
breastplate
careful workmanship,
signified a stone
make
for
a
each
chest
tribe.
piece that will be used to determine God's will. Use the same materials as you did for the ephod: fine linen cloth embroidered with gold thread and blue, purple, and scarlet yarn. This chest piece will be made of 2 folds of cloth, forming a pouch 9 inches square. 4 rows of gemstones will be attached to it. The first row will contain a red carnelian, a chrysolite, and an emerald. The second row will contain a turquoise, a sapphire, and a white moonstone. The third row will contain a jacinth, an agate, and an amethyst. The fourth row will contain a beryl, an onyx, and a jasper. All these stones will be set in gold. Each stone will represent one of the tribes of Israel, and the name of that tribe will be engraved on it as though it were a seal. To attach the chest piece to the ephod, make braided cords of pure gold. Then make 2 gold rings and attach them to the top corners of the chest piece. The 2 gold cords will go through the rings on the chest piece, and the ends of the cords will be tied to the gold settings on the shoulder pieces of the ephod. Then make 2 more gold rings and attach them to the 2 lower inside corners of the chest piece next to the ephod. And make 2 more gold rings and attach them to the ephod near the sash. Then attach the bottom rings of the chest piece to the rings of the ephod with blue cords. This will hold the chest piece securely to the ephod above the beautiful sash. In this way, Aaron will carry the names of the tribes of Israel on the chest piece over his heart when he goes into the presence of the Lord in the holy place. Thus the Lord will be reminded of his people continually. Insert into the pocket of the chest piece the Urim and Thummim, to be carried over Aaron's heart when he goes into the Lord's presence. Thus Aaron will always carry the objects used to determine the Lord's will for his people whenever he goes in before the Lord. The ephod must be made of fine linen cloth and skillfully embroidered with gold thread and blue, purple, and scarlet yarn. It will consist of 2 pieces, front and back, joined at the shoulders with 2 shoulder pieces. And the sash will be made of the same materials, fine linen cloth embroidered with gold thread and blue, purple, and scarlet yarn. Take 2 onyx stones and engrave on them the names of the tribes of Israel. 6 names will be on each stone, naming all the tribes in the order of their ancestors' births. Engrave these names in the same way a gem cutter engraves a seal. Mount the stones in gold settings. Fasten the 2 stones on the shoulder pieces of the ephod as memorial stones for the people of Israel. Aaron will carry these names before the Lord as a constant reminder. The settings are to be made of gold filigree, and 2 cords made of pure gold will be attached to the settings on the shoulders of the ephod.
And the Lord said unto Moses, Speak unto Aaron thy brother, that he come not at all times
into the holy place within the veil. This is the most holy place now, before the mercy seat, which is upon the ark, that he die not. So the Lord is telling Moses to tell Aaron that he must not come into the most holy place all the time. If he does that, he's going to die. For I will appear in the cloud upon the mercy seat. Thus shall Aaron come into the holy place with a young bullock for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering, and he shall make an atonement for the holy place, because all the sins are accumulated in the holy place. That's where the priests take the blood and they sprinkle it on the curtains, they sprinkle it in the sanctuary. And so for 1 year, that goes on every day pretty much. And so the curtains and the sanctuary is filled with blood, which is sin, because the sin is transferred from the sinner to the animal. And when the animal is slain, the animal's blood is caught in a container. That blood is taken into the sanctuary and thrown on the curtain. And so the sanctuary becomes the depository for sin. Okay? And it goes on, and he shall make an atonement for the holy place because of the uncleanness of the children of Israel and because of their transgression in all their sins. And so shall he do for the tabernacle of the congregation that remaineth among them in the midst of their uncleanness. And there shall be no man in the tabernacle of the congregation when he goeth in to make an atonement in the holy place until he come out and have made an atonement for himself and for his household and for all the congregation of Israel. So on the day of atonement, no human being can be in the sanctuary but Aaron, none. Only he alone has to be in there. And he's making atonement for himself, for his family, and for the entire house of Israel. Okay? And so the holy place is filled with sin, blood. And it continues. And he shall take a censer full of coals of fire from off the altar before the Lord, and his hands full of sweet incense beaten small, and bring it within the veil. And he shall put the incense upon the fire before the Lord, and the cloud of the incense, that the cloud of the incense may cover the mercy seat that is upon the testimony, that he die not. And he shall take of the blood of the bullock and sprinkle it with his finger upon the mercy seat eastward, and before the mercy seat shall he sprinkle of the blood with his finger 7 times. Okay? And so because of the glory of God that shines out between those angels depicted upon the mercy seat, Aaron has to go in there with this altar, with the incense, and as its smokes fill the place, he can look and see. Because if he goes in and this smoke does not fill the place, he will die from the brightness of God's glory. So he can only look or see what's happening through the smoke because of the bright light. So he uses the smoke as a smoke screen so he can see what he's doing. And he goes in with blood and he sprinkles it 7 times on the mercy seat. And he puts some on the horn. And so the curtain, the veil is shifted and the sanctuary becomes one apartment on the Day of Atonement, because Aaron now has access to both apartments. And this is why no human being can go in the sanctuary on that day, because only Aaron can look upon the ark. Only Aaron can go in there at that day. Any other human being is in there that day, they will die. The bells
that are upon Aaron's sanctuary garments, at the end of his garment. The reason why the bells are there, if Aaron dies in the sanctuary, nobody can go in for him. They have to pull him out by a rope that's tied to his leg, because no one is allowed to go in there. And as they do who are outside, the priests waiting on Aaron to come out, if they hear the bell not moving, they know Aaron after a while is dead, and they can't go inside for him. They have to pull him out. So this is why he has to make sure the incense ascend, the smoke, because if he looks on God's glory, he's going to die. I hope we're clear so far. No. And Aaron shall come into the tabernacle of the congregation and shall put off the linen garment, and he shall wash, which he put on when he went into the holy place, and shall leave them there, and shall wash his flesh with water in the holy place. So when Aaron performs this duty, the blood on his finger, because no other priest could go in the sanctuary with blood on their finger, you know. Aaron is the only one that can do this. Any priest that did that before, in the sanctuary, blood on them, they would die. So no, the sin transferred from the sinner to the animal. From the animal blood, and it is sprinkled in the sanctuary. Now on the Day of Atonement, those sins are on Aaron. Aaron becomes the embodiment of all the sins that the people committed through the course of the year. And so Aaron is in the holy place now, and the Lord instructs Moses that Aaron has to take off his clothes, wash his flesh, and he and God alone is in there. And Aaron now wash his flesh, takes off the garment that he had on, and it says, and put on his garment and come forth and offer burnt offerings and burnt offering for the people, and make an atonement for himself and for the people. And this shall be a statute forever unto you, that in the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, ye shall afflict your souls and do no work at all, whether it be one of your own country or a stranger that sojourneth among you. For on that day shall the priest make an atonement for you to cleanse you, that ye may be clean from all your sins before the Lord. And this shall be an everlasting statute unto you, to make an atonement for the children of Israel for all their sins once a year. And he did as the Lord commanded Moses. Aaron can only do this one time for the year. And this is called the Day of Atonement. And he goes in to atone for Israel. And the Lord said unto Moses, speak unto Aaron thy brother, that he come not at all times into the holy place within the veil, before the mercy seat, which is upon the ark, that he die not. For I will appear in the cloud upon the mercy seat. Thus shall Aaron come into the holy place with a bullock for sin offering and a ram for burnt offering. And he shall put on the holy linen coat, shall have the linen breeches upon his flesh, and shall be girded with linen girdle, and with linen mitre shall he be attired. These are holy garments, therefore shall he wash his flesh in water, and so put them on. And he shall take of the congregation of the children of Israel 2 kids of the goats for a sin offering, and 1 ram for a burnt offering. The Lord is specific. And Aaron shall offer his bullock of the sin offering, which is for himself, and make an atonement for himself and for his house. And he shall take the 2 goats and present them before the Lord at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And Aaron shall cast lots upon the 2 goats, one lot for the Lord, and the other lot for the scapegoat. So 2 goats. One goat is called the scapegoat, and one of the goat is for the Lord. And Aaron shall bring the goat upon which the Lord's lot fell, and offer him for sin offering. So one of the goats is offered as a sin offering. But the goat on which the lot fell, to be the scapegoat, shall be presented alive before the Lord, to make an atonement with him, and to let him go for a scapegoat in the wilderness. So this scapegoat will be the goat that Aaron will rest his hand on, and transferred all the sins from Aaron to this scapegoat. Okay? And Aaron shall bring the bullock of the sin offering, which is for himself, and shall make an atonement for himself and for his house, and shall kill the bullock of the sin offering, which is for himself. And he shall take a censer full of coals of fire from off the altar before the Lord, with his hands full of sweet incense beaten small, and bring it within the veil. And he shall put the incense upon the fire before the Lord, and the cloud of the incense may cover the mercy seat that is upon the testimony, that he die not. And he shall take of the blood of the bullock, and sprinkle it with his finger upon the mercy seat eastward, and before the mercy seat shall he sprinkle the blood with his finger 7 times, and then shall he kill the goat of the sin offering, that is for the people. That goat is for the people that died, and bring his blood now within the veil, and do with that blood as he did with the blood of the bullock, and sprinkle it upon the mercy seat and before the mercy seat. So Aaron is repeating this process, and he does this with the Lord's goat. This is to show the atonement of the people, the death of this goat for the people. And the scapegoat is where their sins now resides on the scapegoat, and the scapegoat is released in the wilderness. And she shall make an atonement for the holy place because of the uncleanness of the children of Israel, and because of their transgressions in all their sins. And so shall he do for the tabernacle of the congregation that remaineth among them in the midst of their uncleanness. And there shall be no man in the tabernacle of the congregation when he goeth in to make an atonement in the holy place, until he come out and have made an atonement for himself and for his house and for all the congregation of Israel. And he shall go out unto the altar that is before the Lord, and make an atonement for it, and shall take of the blood of the bullock and the blood of the goat, and put it upon the horn of the altar round about. And he shall sprinkle of the blood upon it with his finger 7 times, and cleanse it, and hallow it from the uncleanness of the children of Israel. And when he had made an end of reconciling the holy place, and the tabernacle of the congregation, and the altar, he shall bring the live goat. And Aaron shall lay both his hands upon the head of the live goat, and confess over him all the iniquities of the children of Israel, and all the transgression and in all their sins, putting them upon the head of the goat, and shall send him away by the hand of a fit man into the wilderness. And the goat shall bear upon him all their iniquities unto a land not inhabited. And he shall let the goat into the wilderness. And Aaron shall come into the tabernacle of the congregation, and shall put off the linen garments which he put on when he went into the holy place, and leave them there. And he shall wash his flesh with water in the holy place, and put on his garments, and come forth, and offer his burnt offering, and the burnt offering for the people, and make an atonement for himself and for the people. And the fat of the sin offering shall he burn upon the altar. This was a meticulous undertaking, extremely meticulous. And if Aaron made any mistake, he would die. And so a fit man took the scapegoat, took him in the wilderness, and let him go. And he that let go the goat, a scapegoat, shall wash his clothes, bathe his flesh in water, and afterward come into the camp. And the bullock for the sin offering, and the goat for the sin offering, whose blood was brought in to make an atonement in the holy place, shall one carry forth without the camp, and shall burn in the fire their skins, and their flesh, and their dung, and he shall burn them, and he that burned them shall wash his clothes, and bathe his flesh in water, and afterward shall he come into the camp. And this shall be a statute forever unto you, that in the 7th month, on the 10th day of the month, ye shall afflict your souls, and do no work at all, whether it be one of your own country, or a stranger that sojourneth among you. Now, I'm just going to read Leviticus chapter 16 and verse 33, the red highlighted section. And he shall make an atonement for the sanctuary, and he shall make an atonement for the tabernacle of the congregation, and for the altar, and he shall make an atonement for the priests, and for the people of the congregation. So Aaron makes an atonement for the sanctuary, for the tabernacle of the congregation, for the altar, because of the amount of blood. All the furnitures and everything is polluted with sin, blood. And so as Aaron makes an atonement, what happens with all the blood that was in the sanctuary? This accumulation of blood for every day of the year, blood. These hundreds of thousands of people constantly bringing animals, and the blood and the blood and the blood. What became of the blood? On the Day of Atonement, Aaron making atonement for the sanctuary, for the altar, for the congregation of the people, the blood miraculously disappeared. The sanctuary was cleansed of all the blood. In the book Counsel to Churches, Sister White writes the following: then by virtue of the atoning blood of Christ, the sins of all the truly penitent will be blotted from the books of heaven. Thus the sanctuary will be freed or cleansed from the record of sin. In the type, or this is the time of Aaron, in the type, this great work of atonement or blotting out of sins was represented by the service of the Day of Atonement. The cleansing of the earthly sanctuary which was accomplished by the removal by virtue of the blood of the sin offering, of the sins by which it had been polluted. God miraculously cleansed the sanctuary of the blood. Because if you left the blood in the sanctuary on the Day of Atonement, you left the sin. But the Lord removed it totally. So after the atonement was done, the sanctuary was brand new, like the day it was made. And the service started the next day again. But the priests would enter a sanctuary totally cleansed. Great controversy. Now the events takes place foreshadow in the last service of the Day of Atonement, when the ministration in the Holy of Holies had been completed and the sins of Israel had been removed from the sanctuary by virtue of the blood of the sin offering. Then the scapegoat was presented alive before the Lord, and in the presence of the congregation, the high priest confessed over him all the iniquities of the children of Israel and all their transgression in all their sins, putting them upon the head of the goat. So the sins miraculously disappeared from the sanctuary, and the goat becomes the bearer of all these sins. God is good and greatly to be praised. And throughout the book of the Old Testament, you will see repeatedly in Numbers, that it was the Levites, the Levites, the Levites, the Levites were the one constantly spoken of who should be the priests. And so the showbread was kept ever before the Lord as a perpetual offering. Thus it was part of the daily sacrifice. It was called the showbread, or the bread of the presence, because it was ever before the face of the Lord. It was an acknowledgement of man's dependence upon God for both temporal and spiritual food, and that it is received only through the mediation of Christ. God fed Israel in the wilderness with bread from heaven, and they were still dependent upon his bounty, both for temporal food and spiritual blessings. Both the manna and the showbread pointed to Christ, the living bread, who is ever in the presence of God for us. He himself said, I am the living bread which came down from heaven. John 6, verse 48 to 51. Frankincense was placed upon the loaves when the bread was removed every Sabbath to be replaced by fresh loaves. The frankincense was burned upon the altar as a memorial before God. And so the priests, they did a 1 week shift. So from Sabbath till Sabbath was one shift, and another set of priests would come in and replace the priest that left. And so this is why the Lord ensured that the priests would be properly trained for 5 years before they undertook this work. Because if you made a mistake, you'd be dead. And so Aaron did a work on the Day of Atonement, and the Lord forgave Israel. And this is what the sanctuary service inside the sanctuary looked like. On the Day of Atonement, the sanctuary was one apartment because the curtain was removed or shifted to the sides. And I hope we're clear. No. The ark remained at Shiloh for 300 years until, because of the sins of Eli's house, it fell into the hands of the Philistines, and Shiloh was ruined. The ark was never returned to the tabernacle here. The sanctuary service was finally transferred to the temple at Jerusalem, and Shiloh fell into insignificance. There are only ruins to mark the spot where it once stood. Long afterward, its fate was made use of as a warning to Jerusalem. Go ye now unto my people, which was in Shiloh, and the Lord declared by the prophet Jeremiah, where I set my name at first, and see what I did to it for the wickedness of my people Israel. Therefore will I do unto this house, which is called by my name, wherein ye trust, and unto the place which I gave to you and to your fathers, as have I done to Shiloh. So here Jeremiah was warning them that they were doing wickedness. And because Shiloh before was where the Ark of the Covenant was before it removed to Jerusalem, Jeremiah was telling the children of Israel that as God destroyed his people in Shiloh, removed the Ark of the Covenant, and as it is now in Jerusalem, in the temple that Solomon built, so the Lord was able to destroy Solomon's temple. They weren't listening. So you know what the Lord eventually did? He destroyed the temple that Solomon built, and he used the Babylonians. No. Before the Babylonians came and destroyed the temple, Jeremiah did something amazing with the Ark of the Covenant. Jeremiah knew that the Babylonians was coming to destroy the temple. God told him. Listen what he did. Because of Israel's transgression of the commandments of God and their wicked acts, God suffered them to go into captivity, to humble and punish them before the temple was destroyed. God made known to a few of his faithful servants of the fate of the temple, which was the pride of Israel, and which they had regarded with idolatry. while they were sinning against God, he also revealed to them the captivity of Israel. These righteous men, just before the destruction of the temple, removed the sacred ark containing the tables of stone, and with mourning and sadness secreted it in a cave where it was to be hid from the people of Israel because of their sins, and was to be no more restored to them. The sacred ark is yet hid. It has never been disturbed since it was secreted. You see, the secret ark was taken from Solomon's temple secretly by Jeremiah and some men with him. And these men were men who are allowed to go in the most holy place. God moved upon them, protected them, and they went in, took out the ark under God's direction, and hid it. Because only the high priest alone could go in the most holy place. But here God moved in upon these men, allowed them to go in, remove the ark, and put it in a cave. And inspiration said, it has never been disturbed from its secret spot. And so, all the priests that perform any priestly service after that, even in the Zerubbabel temple that was rebuilt, the temple that Christ came in, the reason why Caiaphas and Annas and these evil priests that was responsible for crucifying Christ could go in the sanctuary on the Day of Atonement and did not die, because there was no ark. They were going in an empty, most holy place. But the people did not know. They did not know that Jeremiah and some men with him, God's appointed men, had taken the ark and had carried and hidden it away. So all those men that deceived the Jews in crucifying Christ, they were going in an ark, in a temple which was empty. So this is why they were able to persuade the people that they were God's agent. Because if these men could go before an holy God and the people believed the ark was there, how could they be wicked, go before God's presence and not die? So no, the people would think, is Christ the Son of God? Or is it that the priests are righteous men? If the priests are righteous men and the ark is in the most holy place, how could they go before God, live, and at the same time, they're saying Christ is led by the prince of devils, Beelzebub? So the people were confused. But Christ and those with him would have known that these men are not God's men. There's no ark in there. They're going in an empty sanctuary. Inspiration continues. The precious record of the law was placed in the ark of the testimony and is still there, safely hidden from the human family. But in God's appointed time, he will bring forth these tables of stone to be a testimony to all the world against the disregard of his commandments and against the idolatrous worship of a counterfeit Sabbath. Here inspiration is saying, God is going to bring out the ark from where it is hidden. If he brings it out back, it has to be in the hands of a sacred ministry with no guile in their mouth, who follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. And this is not at the second coming of Christ, This is before Christ comes. This is done. God will have a church without spot or wrinkle or any such thing. So now, when Jesus Christ came and died and the veil of the temple was rent in twain from top to bottom. There was no ark of the covenant in there. Caiaphas, Annas, and all those priests were pretending. They were sinners and they were wicked, deceiving men, deceiving the people. If the ark was in there, they could not go in and live. So they would go in, have on the priestly garb, the bell, and all the things that the high priest was required to have, but they were devoid of the Spirit of God. It was a show. It was an illusion. So when the veil of the temple was rent in twain, there was no ark. Nothing was there. So those priests that was in the temple, and when Christ died during Passover, those common priests, when they saw the veil rent, nothing was in there. It was empty. And this is why many of those priests, when the apostles started to preach truth, many of them, it was said, became obedient to the faith. They would have seen that God's presence was totally gone from the Jewish leaders. And so Christ replaced the Levitical priesthood with the priesthood of Melchizedek. How? Christ was not of the tribe of Levi. And this is what Hebrews 3:2-4 has to say, as outlined. Wherefore, holy brethren, partakers of the heavenly calling, consider the apostle and high priest of our profession, Christ Jesus. Christ Jesus is the high priest. Wherefore, in all things it behooved him to be made like unto his brethren, that he might be a merciful and faithful high priest pertaining to the high priest in things pertaining to God, to make reconciliation for sins of the people. And it continues. Seeing then that we have a great high priest that is passed into the heavens, Jesus the Son of God, let us hold fast our profession, for we have not an high priest which cannot be touched with the feelings of our infirmities, but was in all points tempted like as we are, yet without sin. Let us therefore come boldly unto the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. How could Christ then, not being of the tribe of Levi, become a great high priest? Not an high priest, a great high priest. No. In Genesis chapter 14, verse 12, 16, and 18 to 20, we read the following. And they took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. And he brought back all the goods, and also brought again his brother Lot, and his goods, and the women also, and the people. This is Abraham. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, and this word Salem means priest. This is what Jerusalem was called before it was turned to Jerusalem. And the word Salem means peace, and Jeru means Jewish peace. So when the children of Israel took over Salem, they add the word Jeru to the word Salem, and the both words became one word, Jeru, to Salem, and the word became Jerusalem, or Jewish peace. Or this land now becomes the place where Israel has, and it's a place of peace. Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he, this is Melchizedek, was priest of the Most High God, and he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram, of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth. And he blessed the Most High God, which had delivered thine enemies into thine hand. And he, Abram, gave tithes of all. Abraham returned tithes to Melchizedek, and Melchizedek was a priest before Aaron. Aaron was not born. Isaac was not born. Jacob was not born. And the 12 sons of Jacob was not born. So this priest is greater than the Levitical priest, Melchizedek. And Paul says in Hebrews 7 and verse 14, for it is evident that our Lord sprung out of Judah, of which tribe Moses spake nothing concerning priesthood. So how then could Christ become a priest when he was not of the tribe of Levi? Because the tribe of Judah could not be priests. And this is why the Jews reject Jesus Christ, because they say Jesus Christ could never be a priest because Jesus came from Judah. How could Jesus then be the Christians' priest? So they say the Christians have gotten it wrong. Only Levites could be priests, and Jesus is from the tribe of Judah. No. Paul, who raised that point in the book of Hebrews, is going to also answer the question. Now, Psalm 111, verse 1 through to 5, says the following. The Lord said unto my Lord, the Lord, David is writing, the Father said unto my Lord, the Son, or Christ, sit at my right hand until I make thine enemies thy footstool. The Lord shall send the rod of thy strength out of Zion. Rule thou in the midst of thine enemies. Thy people shall be willing in the day of thy power, in the beauties of holiness, from the womb of the morning. Thou hast the dew of thine youth. The Lord hath sworn and will not repent. Thou, this is Christ, art a priest forever, after the order of Melchizedek. This is David, saying a priest would come, not after the priesthood of Aaron, but after the priesthood of Melchizedek. The Lord at thy right hand shall strike through kings in the day of his wrath. This is Psalm. And David, who lived under the Melchizedek and who lived under the Aaronic priesthood, the Levitical priesthood, was saying there is a priesthood that is coming that is not after the order of the Levitical priesthood, but after the order of the Melchizedekan priesthood. And this Melchizedekan priesthood is a priesthood forever. Now, in Hebrews 7, verse 1 to 11, Paul picks up the following. For this Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of the Most High God, met Abraham returning from the slaughter of the kings and blessed him, to whom also Abraham gave a 10th part of all. First, Paul is going to tell us what the word Melchizedek means. First, being by interpretation, king of righteousness. And after that also king of Salem, which is king of peace. Now Melchizedek, Paul says, without father, without mother, without descent, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but made like the Son of God. So Melchizedek is not the Son of God, but he was made like the Son of God, abideth a priest continually. Paul continues, now consider how great this man Melchizedek was, unto whom even the patriarch Abraham gave the 10th of the spoils. And verily, they that are of the sons of Levi, who receive the office of the priesthood, have a commandment to take tithes of the people according to the law. That's the law that governed the sanctuary. The priests receive the tithe, that is of their brethren, though they come out of the loins of Abraham. But he, Melchizedek, whose descendant is not counted from them, are of Levites, received tithes of Abraham, and bless him, that is Abraham, that had the promises. And without all contradiction, the less is blessed of the better. The baby cannot bless the pastor. The baby cannot dedicate the pastor. The pastor in church has to dedicate the baby. The pastor in church has to bless the baby. And so here Paul is saying, if Melchizedek blessed Abraham, Melchizedek has to be greater than Abraham. He continues, and here, when Paul was alive, and here, men that die receive tithes, but there, he receiveth them of whom it is witness that he liveth. Paul says, when I'm writing the book of Hebrews, Melchizedek is still alive. We don't know who this man Melchizedek was. And Paul said he was made like the Son of God. And as I may so say, Levi also, who received tithes, paid tithes in Abraham, for he was yet in the loins of his father when Melchizedek met him. That's what Paul is saying. Abraham did not have Isaac as yet. And Isaac did not have Jacob as yet. And Jacob did not have his 12 sons as yet. So in essence, when Abraham paid tithes, he was paying tithes for his children. For he was yet in the loins of his father when Melchizedek met him. If therefore perfection were by the Levitical priesthood, for under it the people received the law. That's the Levitical law he's talking about, not the 10 Commandments. What further need was there that another priest should arise after the order of Melchizedek and not be called after the order of Aaron? Sister White made the following reference in Desire of Ages. She says, the Holy Spirit is Christ's representative, but divested of the personality of humanity and independent thereof. The Holy Spirit does not manifest itself as a man, and it does not come in humanity. He is not a man. So Melchizedek was not the Holy Spirit. She goes on. It was Christ that spoke through Melchizedek, the priest of the Most High God. Melchizedek was not Christ, but he was the voice of God in the world, the representative of the Father. So Melchizedek was not the Father. No man hath yet seen God. That is the Father. No man can look upon the Father and live. So Melchizedek was not the Holy Spirit. Melchizedek was not Christ. And Melchizedek was not Jesus. Melchizedek is a mysterious personage that no one has ever understood. And Paul said, because the Jews were so stubborn and dull, he couldn't get into the subject. And inspiration says, as soon as David was established upon the throne of Israel, he began to seek a more appropriate location for the capital of his realm. 20 miles from Hebron, a place was selected as a future metropolis for the kingdom. Before Joshua had led the armies of Israel over the Jordan, it was called Salem. Near this place, Abraham had proved his loyalty to God. 800 years before the coronation of David, it had been the home of Melchizedek, the priest of the Most High God. It held a central and elevated position in the country and was protected by an environment of hills, being on the border between Benjamin and Judah. It was in close proximity to Ephraim and was easy of access to the other tribes. And so it was Salem where Melchizedek lived, and he was king of this place. And he had neither father nor mother, nor beginning of days, nor end of life, but was made like the Son of God. And we don't know who this being is, because Paul said he's yet alive. And so we rest Melchizedek and leave it until we get in the promised land, in the kingdom. We can find out more who this being is. And inspiration says, Paul in the book of Hebrews write the following: inasmuch as not without an oath he, this is Christ, was made priest. For those priests, the Levitical priest, was made without an oath, but this with an oath by him that said unto him, the Lord swear and will not repent, thou art a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. By so much was Jesus made a surety of a better testament, And they truly were many priests, because they were not suffered to continue by reason of death. They died. And as they died, other priests replaced the ones that died. But this man, because he continueth ever at an unchangeable priesthood, wherefore he is able to also save them to the uttermost that come unto God by him, seeing he ever liveth to make intercession for them. For such an high priest became us, who is holy, harmless, undefiled, separate from sinners, and made higher than the heavens, who needed not daily, as those high priests, to offer up sacrifice for his own sins and then for the people's. For this he did once, when he offered up himself. For the law maketh men high priests, which are at infirmity. But the word of the oath, this is God the Father, said, I am taking an oath that thou art a priest forever. For the word of the oath, which was since the law, maketh the Son, who is consecrated forevermore. Jesus is an high priest after the order of Melchizedek. And he continues, Paul, for unto which of the angels said he at any time, thou art my son, this day have I begotten thee. And again, I will be to him a father, and he shall be to me a son. Psalm 2, verse 7 and 12. The Son of God is the priest, after the order of Melchizedek. Not any priest. This is the high priest, the great high priest. I will declare the decree. The Lord hath said unto me, thou art my son, this day have I begotten thee. Kiss the Son, lest he be angry, and he perish from the way when his wrath is kindled but a little. Blessed are all they that put their trust in him. So also Christ glorified not himself to be made an high priest, but he that said unto him, thou art my son, today have I begotten thee, as he saith also in another place, thou art a priest forever, after the order of Melchizedek. So Jesus Christ is our high priest after the order of Melchizedek. Now, Paul goes into the matter. Hebrews chapter 8, verse 1, 2, 4, and 5, the Apostle Paul made the following statement. Now of the things which we have spoken, this is the sum. We have such an high priest who is set on the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens, a minister of the sanctuary and of the true tabernacle which the Lord pitched, and not man. For if he were unhurt, he should not be a priest, seeing that there are priests that offer gifts according to the law. And this is the Levitical law, the law that governed the sanctuary, that only Aaron's sons should be priests, who serve unto the example and shadow of heavenly things, as Moses was admonished of God when he was about to make the tabernacle. For see, saith he, that thou make all things according to the pattern showed to thee in the mount. So God showed Moses what would transpire in heaven, and Moses made a pattern for it. So what Moses built was the type, the picture, but the true thing, the antitype, is in heaven. And the Levitical priesthood carried on something that was a shadow of the real thing that Jesus Christ would do. But as the majesty, his type was Melchizedek, not Aaron. And so the earthly is a shadow or picture of what took place in the heavenly. And I hope we're clear. Paul, for there was a tabernacle made, the first wherein was the candlestick and the table of the showbread, which was called the sanctuary or the holy place. And after the second veil, the tabernacle, which is the holiest of all, which had the golden censer and the ark of the covenant overlaid round about with gold, wherein was the golden pot that had the manna and Aaron's rod that budded, and the tables of the covenant and over it the cherubims of glory, overshadowing the mercy seat, of which we cannot now speak particularly. Okay? And Paul said he wouldn't go in to describe the cherubims. And you know that Lucifer was one of the covering cherubs. He was one of the covering cherubs, one of the angels that had an exalted position. He dwelt in the glory of God. And so this is what the covering cherubs represent now. The angels in heaven with the highest position. And so when Lucifer fell, he was replaced by Gabriel. And so Paul said he was not going to discuss the covering cherubs at the moment. And he moved on. Then he continues. Now, when these things were thus ordained, the priest went always into the first tabernacle or the first apartment, accomplishing the service of God. But into the second went the high priest alone once every year, not without blood, which he offered for himself and for the errors of the people. The Holy Ghost, this signifying that the way into the holiest of all was not yet made manifest while the first tabernacle was yet standing. So while you had the first tabernacle, the Levitical tabernacle, while it was going on, the one in heaven was not set up because you did not have two contending tabernacles at the same time. Only one was in operation. And once Christ rent the veil of the temple and brought the first one to an end, the second one would be brought into operation. So here Paul is saying that the way into the holiest of all was not yet made manifest, while as the first tabernacle was yet standing. All things has to be done decently and in order. And Paul continues, and almost all things are by the law purged with blood. And without the shedding of blood is no remission. It is therefore necessary that the patterns of things in the heavens should be purified with these things. So blood cleansed the earthly, blood has to cleanse the heavenly. But the heavenly things themselves with better sacrifices than these, for Christ is not entered into the holy places made with hands, which are the figures of the true, are a type of the true, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God for us. Amen. Amen. So the earthly explains the heavenly. In the book of Revelation, chapter 1, verse 1, verse 10, and verse 12 to 14, I read the following. The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave unto him, to show unto his servants things which must surely come to pass. And he sent and signified it by his angel unto his servant John. John says, I was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, and I heard behind me a great voice as of a trumpet. And I turned to see the voice that spake with me. Being turned, I saw 7 golden candlesticks. If we remember the sanctuary, the candlesticks are in the holy apartment. So when John saw Christ in Revelation chapter 1, Jesus Christ was operating in the holy place. And in the midst of the 7 candlesticks, one like the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to the foot, and girt about the paps with a golden girdle, just like the priest had anciently. And his head and his hair were like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were as flame, a flame of fire. So you see, when John saw Christ, he saw him by the candlesticks in the holy apartment. That's where he saw him. And I hope that we're clear. So the earthly explains the heavenly. So John saw Christ. When John saw him, he was in the holy place of the sanctuary, standing by the candlesticks. That's where John saw him. And so, in going back to Hebrews, for Christ is not entered into the holy places made with hands, which are the figures of the true, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God for us. And Paul continues, seeing then that we have a great high priest that is passed into the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold fast our profession. For we have an high priest. For we have not an high priest which cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmities, but is in all points tempted like as we are, yet without sin. Let us therefore come boldly unto the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. So see, the cleansing now of the heavenly sanctuary. So all the time, Christ was operating in the holy place, not the most holy place. In the holy place, not the most holy place. And he was by the candlestick. So from John's time, for years, that's where the sanctuary was the abode of sin. The collection of sin operates or take place in the holy place. So we don't need to bring animal sacrifices every day whenever we sin, but we take the blood of Christ. His atonement. This is why we pray through his name. His blood covers our sins. And as time progresses, he has to go in the most holy place to remove those sins, because the earthly explains the heavenly. And we continue. Daniel chapter 8. Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto that certain saint which spake, how long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and the transgression of desolation, to give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden under foot? Verse 14. And he said unto me, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. And it shall come to pass, and it came to pass, when even I, Daniel, had seen the vision and sought for the meaning, then behold, there stood before me as the appearance of a man. No, Daniel said, unto 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. The temple was destroyed by the Babylonians, and Babylon had taken the children of Israel captive to Babylon. Daniel was a captive in Babylon. So Daniel could not understand which sanctuary was going to be cleansed after 2,300 days, because there were no sanctuary. There were no temple. Jeremiah had already hid the ark. There was nothing. What cleansing of sanctuary was this that Daniel had written about? To further complicate the matter, it is said to Daniel, but thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase. So whatever the 2,300 days prophecy meant, it would not be understood until the end. It was for the time of the end. Daniel 12 and verse 9. And he said, go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. It would not be applicable for Daniel's days. So this 2,300 days till the sanctuary be cleansed could not be 2,300 literal days, because this would be applicable to the time of the end. So this 2,300 days, whatever it meant, could not be 2,300 literal days. And so in Numbers chapter 14, verse 34, and in Ezekiel 4 and verse 6, we read the following. After the number of the days in which he searched the land, even 40 days, each day for a year, shall ye bear your iniquities, even 40 years, and ye shall know my breach of promise. Ezekiel 4:6. And when thou hast accomplished them, lie again on thy right side, and thou shalt bear the iniquity of the house of Judah 40 days. I have appointed thee each day for a year. So since Daniel's prophecy was for the time of the end, those 2,300 days could not be 2,300 literal days, but 2,300 years. A prophecy that would come right to the time of the end, where knowledge increase and human beings are indeed running to and fro through the earth. That was not the case in Daniel's time. Daniel was a captive in Babylon. He could not even run to and fro anywhere. And so the sanctuary, though, would have to be cleansed at the end of the 2,300 years. If it's at the time of the end, it could not be the earthly sanctuary. There was no sanctuary in Daniel's time. Babylon had destroyed it. And the temple that existed in Christ's time, the veil of the temple was rent in twain at the death of Christ, and then the Romans came and destroyed it. So the only sanctuary that could be cleansed in the latter days would have to be the one in heaven. But the time that Daniel was given, the angel came back and told Daniel the following. The angel said, I'm going to tell you when you start to calculate the 2,300 years from. At the beginning of thy supplications, the commandment came forth, and I am come to show thee, for thou art greatly beloved. Therefore, understand the matter and consider the vision. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah, the Prince, all the calculations that you got in the book of Daniel, the time that I've given you, you're going to start your calculation from the time the command is given for the children of Israel to go back home to restore Jerusalem. That's when you start to calculate from. And inspiration tells us that the command went out in 557 BC. So the 2,300 days are 2,300 years. I hope we're clear. And the faith I live by, the 2,300 days have been found to begin when the commandment of Artaxerxes for the restoration and building of Jerusalem went into effect in the autumn of 557 BC. Taking this as the starting point, there was perfect harmony in the application of all the events foretold in the explanation of that period in Daniel 9, verse 25 to 27. The years extend to 1844. Then said the angel, shall the sanctuary be cleansed. And just for time, let me show you quickly right here the calculation. So the command went in 557. Now some said there is 2 time span, one given by Sister White in the Great Controversy, Faith I Live By, and several other books where she said 557. And they have minus the 557 from the 2,300 days or 2,300 years, and they get 1843. 1 year short of 1844. But here Brother Houtif gave 456, and it came to 1844. So the question has been asked, why is one 557 and why one 556? And some say the one that says 556, that's the correct date. And the one that says 557, that's the incorrect date. But both times are correct. Both dates are correct. If you put 556, it's correct, still 1844. And if you put 557, it was still going to land in 1844. And the question was asked. In track 3, number 3, the Judgment of the Harvest, the 1942 edition, page 37, the computation, according to the diagram, dates the beginning of the 2,300 days prophecy, Daniel 8:14, from 556. Whereas the Great Controversy on page 328 dates it from 457. How do we harmonize the two? Answer. Dealing with the long prophetic period in the round numbers only, the track counts back 2,300 years from 1844. So if you minus 1844 from 2,300, thus allocating the period starting point as 556. So if you minus 1844 from 2,300, you are going to get 556 as a starting period. So it is correct, the 556. The great controversy, however, is dealing with the fact that the period began not in the first month of the year according to the present calendar, but rather the 7th month or October of the year according to the Mosaic calendar. So let me explain. Sister White is dealing with the Jewish calendar right here. And she states right here that we know that the Jewish month starts in the month of April. That's when the Jewish calendar begins. So the first month in the Jewish calendar starts in April. This is when a new year starts. This is when the new year starts. So what Sister White did, she got 1844 from 557 because she's dealing with the Jewish calendar. And so as of April, you would come not in 1843, but in 1844, because you have a new year that has begun. So once you pass April, you come to 1844. So this is why when she starts in 557, instead of it stopping in 1843, after April, a new year began. That was 1844. And so if you minus 1844 from 2,300, you get this, 456. If you use 557 and come after April and you go in the new year, you still get 1844. So both of them give you 1844. One is minus sin, 1844 from 2,300, which gives you this. The next one starts right here and comes after April in the new year, and you get 1844. So whatever calculation, so Sister White use a Jewish calendar, while Brother Houghton does minus 1844 from 2,300 to get 456. So both are correct, and both are looking at the subject from two different standpoints. Sister White going with the Jewish calendar, Brother Houghton does using the minus, and both are correct. And this is why he explained that this is what they did. He just minus this from this, that gives you 456, and Sister White goes in the Mosaic calendar. This is why she got 457 and why he got 456, but you can use them interchangeably. Okay? And so Christ appearing as our great high priest before the heavenly sanctuary. Now, when we read Revelation chapter 1, we saw where Christ was standing beside the candlestick. But now, in great controversy, in the service of the earthly sanctuary, which, as we have seen, is a figure of the service in the heavenly, when the high priest on the Day of Atonement entered the most holy place, the ministration in the first apartment ceased. God commanded, there shall be no man in the tabernacle of the congregation when he goeth to make an atonement in the holy place until he comes out. Leviticus 16:7. So when Christ entered the Holy of Holiest to perform the closing work of atonement, he ceased his ministration in the first apartment. But when the ministration in the first apartment ended, the ministration in the second apartment began. In the typical service, the high priest left the holy on the Day of Atonement and went in before God to present the blood of the sin offering in behalf of all Israel who truly repented of their sins. So Christ had only completed one part of his work as our intercessor to enter upon another portion of the work, and he still pleaded his blood before the Father in behalf of sinners. And so that's what Christ did. And in Revelation chapter 4, verse 1 through to 5, it tells Christ moving from the holy place to the most holy place. And this is when now the temple becomes one. Because anciently, when Aaron went in, the curtain was shifted and the sanctuary became one apartment, one room. After this, John said, I looked, and behold, a door was opened in heaven. Aaron would call it the curtain. John calls it the door. Sometimes it's called the veil. A door was opened in heaven, and the first voice which I heard, as it were, of a trumpet talking with me, which said, Come up thither, and I will show thee things which must be hereafter. And immediately I was in the spirit, and behold, a throne was set in heaven, and one sat on the throne. This is like now the glory that came from between the angels on the mercy seat. This is the Father on the throne. And he that sat was to look upon like a jasper and a sardine stone. And there was a rainbow round about the throne, in sight like an emerald. And round about the throne were 24 seats. And upon the seats I saw 24 elders sitting, clothed with white raiment, and they had on their heads crowns of gold. And out of the throne proceeded lightnings and thunderings and voices, and there were 7 lamps of fire burning before the throne, which are the 7 spirits of God. And so, here you have the entire heavenly temple, no throne as one, and the judgment was about to commence, and the Father, the great judge, with the book of life in his hand, about to judge mankind. And only those who confess their sins and Christ's blood atoning for them would be found worthy of eternal life. And God's Spirit searched the entire world and know the hearts of men, those who are repentant and those who are not repentant. And so today, the judgment goes on in the heavenly sanctuary, of which the earthly was a pattern. And so, as John saw the door open, so in 1844, the judgment commenced in heaven. And so I saw in the right hand, John said, of him that sat on the throne, a book written within, and on the backside sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, Who is worthy to open the book and to loose the seals thereof? And no man in heaven, nor in earth, neither under the earth, was able to open the book, neither to look thereon. And I wept much, because no man was found worthy to open the book and to read the book, neither to look thereon. And one of the elders said unto me, Weep not. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, hath prevailed to open the book and to loose the 7 seals thereof. And I beheld, and lo, in the midst of the throne and of the 4 beasts, and in the midst of the elders, stood a lamb, as it had been slain, having 7 horns, all power, and 7 eyes, all sight, which are the 7 spirits of God, sent forth into all the earth. And he came and took the book out of the right hand of him that sat on the throne. And this is the judgment that commenced in 1844 in the heavenly sanctuary. And Christ is going to go through the book to vindicate those that have accepted his sacrifice as a lamb which was slain from the foundation of the earth. Our priests, after the order of Melchizedek, a true tabernacle which a Lord pitched and not man. Daniel described it this: I beheld till the thrones were cast down. The ancient of days did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and his hair as his head, and the hair of his head like the pure wool. His throne was like like the fire flame, and his wheels as burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 times thousands stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven, and came to the Ancients of Days, and they brought him near before him. The judgment was set, the books were open. And that is what commenced in the heavenly sanctuary. And in the book of Exodus, Moses had written the following. And Moses returned unto the Lord and said, Oh, this sin a great sin, and have made them gods of gold. Yet now, if thou wilt forgive their sins, and if not, blot me, I pray thee, out of thy book, which thou hast written. And the Lord said unto Moses, Whosoever hath sinned against me, him will I blot out of my book. And so, those do not have the blood of Christ covering them, the pure and holy sacrifice, the Lamb of God, their names will be taken out. Oh, that one would hear me, Job said. Behold, my desire is that the Almighty would answer me, and that my adversary had written a book. This book. And Psalm 56 verse 8, the psalmist said, Thou tellest my wanderings. Put down my tears in thy bottle. Are they not in thy book? Psalm 69 verse 28. Let them be blotted out of the book of the living, and not be written with the righteous. So, the book is there. And John the Revelator says this, and the temple of God was opened in heaven, and there was seen in his temple the ark of his testament, and there was lightning and voices and thunderings and an earthquake and great hail. The ark is also there. And this is why Moses was told, and this is not the ark that Jeremiah hid. This is the original. This is why Moses was told to build it based on what he was shown. The true tabernacle. And so he built it after the pattern. I hope we're clear. I hope we see. And this is what Paul says. Having therefore, brethren, boldness to enter into holiest by the blood of Jesus, by a new and living way which he had consecrated for us, through the veil, that is to say, his flesh. And having an high priest over the house of God, let us draw near with a true heart, a full assurance of faith, having our hearts sprinkled from an evil conscience, and our bodies washed with pure water. Let us hold fast the profession of our faith without wavering, for he is faithful that promise. And let us consider one another to provoke unto love and to good works, not forsaking the assembly of ourselves together, as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another, and so much more as ye see the day approaching. Brethren, called of God, and high priest after the order of Melchizedek, a better priesthood, a living priesthood. If we fail of making the most of the provision that God has made for us, what excuse could we offer? Saints, to everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven. I said in my heart, God shall judge the righteous and the wicked, for there is a time there for every purpose and every work. Brethren, time is running out. Hold fast to that which is good, and let not go. The judgment is going on, and the names are being called. Let us pray. Eternal Father and God, words cannot thank thee enough for what you've done and what you're doing. O Lamb of God, we come in your presence, falling helpless on thee, and asking you to have mercy and to save us. Through Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Beloved saints, make sure whatever you lose here, you do not lose heaven. Well, we want to read a few more points just for emphasis. And this is a statement that was made. And we're just bringing in these points quickly as we close off. And we did say our closing prayer. But this is what Paul had written to Timothy. He said, some men's sins, he said, and let us bring this for emphasis, and let us go to it. Some men's sins are open beforehand, going before to judgment. Some men's sins, it's open, but they send it before and to judgment. And some men, they follow after. You don't want the probation door to be closed, and you're banging on the door, let me in, like a foolish virgins. You should make sure before the Lord leads out of the sanctuary, before the judgment ends, before Christ said it is done, before he says it is finished, before he says he that is righteous, let him be righteous still, before he says he that is filthy, let him remain filthy still. Before all of these things, we have to send our sins to judgment. We don't want him to step out of the sanctuary and then our sins are coming after he leaves. We can't do that. Christ is interceding now for us in the sanctuary, and let us make do the most of the time and chance that's given us. And this is what Sister White had said. And he saw there 7 lamps of fire burning, the golden altar represented by the golden candlestick, and the altar of incense in the sanctuary of earth. Again, the temple of God was open, and he looked within the inner veil upon the holiest, holy of holies. Here he beheld the ark of his testament, represented by the sacred chest constructed by Moses to contain the law of God. So, what the type or the picture that Moses was shown and was built, the same thing that's going on as an example in the heavenly sanctuary. And God is so wonderful. He used the earthly to explain to us the heavenly, so our understanding can be clear. And this is what Sister White had to say. She says, the book sealed with 7 seals in the right hand of the great judge must contain the names of those whose sins are to be blotted out. No, this is, let me see to make sure I'm giving you the right reference. Okay, let me give you this, let me continue reading. The book sealed with 7 seals in the right hand of the great judge must contain the names of those whose sins are to be blotted out. Inasmuch as this is the only book that no man in heaven nor in earth was able to open, neither to look thereon, save the Lamb which was before the throne, and that's in Revelation 5 verse 1-9. It is unquestionably clear that the book with the 7 seals is the one called the Lamb's book of life, and with it the judgment opened. The book with the 7 seals opened in the judgment is the book called the Lamb's book of life. And if your name is taken out of that book, you have no eternal life. And if your name is not in the book, you have no eternal life. And so that is what the Father has in his hand. And only the Lamb can keep your name in there. Great controversy, Sister White says. As the books of record are opened into judgment, the lives of all who have believed on Jesus come in review before God, beginning with those who first lived upon the earth. Our advocate presents the cases of each successive generation and closes with the living. Every name is mentioned, every case closely investigated. Names are accepted, names rejected. When any have sins remaining upon the books of record, unrepented of and unforgiven, their names will be blotted out of the book of life, and the record of their good deeds will be erased from the book of God's remembrance. The Lord declared to Moses, whosoever had sinned against me, him will I blot out of my book. Exodus 32, 33. And says the prophet Ezekiel, when the righteous turneth away from his righteousness and committed iniquity, all his righteousness that he had done shall not be mentioned. And this is what Sister White said. There, in his open hand, lay the book, the roll of the history of God's providences, the prophetic history of nations and the church. Herein was contained the divine utterances, his authority, his commandments, his laws, the whole symbolic counsel of the eternal, and the history of all ruling powers in the nations. In symbolic language was contained in that roll the influence of every nation, tongue, and people from the beginning of earth's history to its close. That's the book that the Lord had in his hand. This book, Sister White says, from the beginning of time to the end. Saints of the living God, we prayed already, but whatever we lose here, we have to do our best not to lose eternal life. God bless you.